feel when we're getting into deep.
Yaegon and Eve, thank you so much for joining me. How are you guys doing?
Awesome.
We're great. Thank you.
Fantastic. You were just saying before we started, there's a storm. Where are you guys located at the moment?
We're on the northeast coast of the big island of Hawaii.
Oh, you're still in Hawaii. Nice. I love it over there. It's pretty magical, isn't it?
Yeah, it's awesome. It's great to be out in the ocean.
Yeah. Do you guys live there, or are you just kind of touring around?
No, we've been here for about 10 years.
Yep. Nice one. Obviously, such a huge fan of your music. I've only seen you guys perform probably twice, so I'm much more familiar with the audio waves than I am the performances. But yeah, I think I've been a big fan of at least Kalya Scintilla, maybe from the beginning. I think you initially only just had a few tracks up on like Triple J Unearthed. So it was those first early EPs that were very kind of Middle Eastern kind of influences in there. You really kind of just rolled out, all guns blazing with that. It just, incredible music. So thank you for what you do.
Nice.
But I also have just been, watching with a keen eye and seeing that a few more kind of creative projects have popped up recently. You've got Griffin Cloud, you've got Sonic Samadhi, hope I'm saying those right. And I believe before Kalya Scintilla, it all started with Merkaba. Is that correct?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, fantastic. Are you able to maybe just give us a kind of quick rundown of the differences between these four incredible projects that you do?
Yeah, totally. So Merkaba is trance, and it was inspired by Xenon trance. I went to my first, Aussie outdoor doof / festival, Rainbow Serpent 2007. It was somewhere between a doof and a festival back then.
Yeah,
it was a bit of both. But yeah, I saw Sentient and Tetrameth at that party, and I didn't even like trance music before that. But after that experience, it blew me open, and I was feeling like how incredibly powerful dance music can be. Up until that point, I'd been dancing in nightclubs, just doing a little 2D shuffle, and it was fun. But yeah, going out in the bush and being like, whoa, there's a whole other universe. It really, it opened my mind and my heart to a whole new way of music. So yeah, the Merkaba became the focus, but I was already dabbling with beats, and being from the world of hip hop and breaks and party style hip hop, and like funk. I was definitely sort of itching to, get into that a little bit more. So after I developed Merkaba for about a year, I'd been inspired by Beats Antique, Tipper, Spongul, and, other psychedelic down-tempo stuff. And I just decided to sort of fuse these influences. And Kalya Scintilla was born after a series of jams and, months in the studio. And then fast forward to, I'd say maybe about 6 years ago, I really wanted to scratch the itch of my love for techno. So I started dabbling with some 120-ish BPM techno style tracks, which eventually grew into Griffin Cloud. The project had a different name initially, but then Griffin Cloud became the name. And then Sonic Samadhi, again, it was just this other realm of music that we're so passionate about, ambient music.
It's so beautiful.
Yeah, inspired by carbon-based life forms and guys like State Azure on YouTube with his ambient channel. It's music you can just let go and just fall into for hours.
I feel like Sonic Samadhi has been actually born out of the magic of what happens when the masculine and the feminine kind of come together. So that's what really inspired us to understand the potency of intention. And I do a lot of the spoken word in Kalya Scintilla, Merkaba, and Sonic Samadhi. And I just launched my own project, Eve de Voke, which is all spoken word heavy. And putting that together with the music, and we're really excited about playing inside of group energy and group field. And that's where Sonic Samadhi is now gaining her roots. And she's a new budding project, but we're really excited about that one because of that element.
Yeah.
And it was definitely a tough nut to crack, making beat music for decades and then going into a beatless realm and figuring out how to bring that sound together without having the influence of the world of beats so much. So, yeah, that's been fun.
It's incredible music, and I've just really, really been loving that. I mean, those first, I think two tracks that have been on SoundCloud before your recent release that you've put on Spotify. I've just, just gone deep on that so many times, and I feel like ambient music or kind of meditation heavy music or things that could be used as an aid for meditation, they kind of go hand in hand with party music, don't they? Because, I mean, inevitably what goes up must come down, and what a better way to come down than in pure bliss.
Exactly.
And not even, and of course, not even associated with partying, just having your own moments, just solo time or with loved ones, listening to deep, heart-filled music. Absolutely love it. So yeah, your kind of origin story is seems to be a all too common story. Exactly the same story with me. I think I went a year later, 2008, to Rainbow Serpent. Completely different lifestyle, and really struggling with my creativity, and then just split my world, brain, third eye, heart, all wide open, and this kind of new world just opened up. What was that kind of experience like in contrast to your life prior to becoming a full-fledged hippie?
I was living at that stage. I was living in Sydney for about 7 years, all in the inner west, Chippendale and Newtown and, Glebe and all those areas. And for those 7 years, I went to Sydney because the nightclubbing took me there. Mm-hmm. I was going back a little bit. I was heavy metal, rock and roll through and through, Rage Against the Machine, Terror, Fear Factory. Like, I loved that music and the raw power of it. It resonated, right? And then one night, my best mate said, "Hey, let's go to a nightclub on Oxford Street called DCM's." And back then, like, DCM's it's kind of like the closest thing to Studio 54 in Australia. It was like all these glitzy glam people, and it was house, just really funky, cheesy diva house music all night long. People dancing on podiums. And I can't even believe they let us into the nightclub, because the two of us just in that line, we're looking at all the other fancy dress people, and we're just two guys off the street in our early 20s. And somehow they let us in, and we took some disco biscuits, and I came out of that club a changed man. I was like, wow, electronic music can be cool. And, even though that was so cheesy, it felt really good. Like the funk, the bass line, all the disco samples. It was like, wow, this is awesome stuff. So, yeah, that was sort of what really opened the gateway to the electronic music.
Yeah. It all makes sense after that first pinger, doesn't it? I used to hate electronic music with a passion, just hip hop through and through, and then bang, again, similar story. If that,
being a drummer, I quickly gravitated away from house music and went to breakbeats and a little bit of drum and bass, because I just love the grooves, the syncopated rhythms.
Yep.
And it was a special time in electronic music back then. Mm-hmm. In the early 2000s, the UK breakbeats, which then kind of spilled over into US with Crystal Method. You had Chemical Brothers, guys like that big beat sound. It was rocking. It was, especially coming from the world of metal and rock, it was a sort of electronic music you could really associate with. So I did that for 7 years in Sydney, and it was at the end of that 7 years where I was kind of burnt out. I'd been into self-induced rehab a few times where I just took myself out of the city and went to my parents back in the country in the Southern Highlands. And yeah, they'd moved out to a farm. So that was a good retreat for me. And I just found myself, wanting to get out of the city a lot more towards the end. And it was just kind of feeling like you're in this rat race. You're going to the same clubs and doing the same drugs. And it was that experience of Rainbow which sort of opened me to something else. And then it was about 6 months of, when's the next doof? Oh, yeah, we got to call this number, listen to the answering machine. We're going to drive down to a forest in Wingelow, a couple of hours away, and meet a dude at the tree and give him $10 and then have the most amazing night of our lives. Those experiences just became, the focal point. I even remember going to like the last big Sydney festival I went to, and it was with my best mate who I'd, been through the party scene with in Sydney for years. And the two of us were standing there in this festival, and, Beastie Boys are there and All Good Funk Alliance and all this stuff we wanted to see. And we're like, wow, it feels like we're at Central Station peak hour trying to get on a train constantly everywhere we go in this festival. And it just felt so uninspiring. And we got to a point where we literally just said, you want to just leave? And it was like the end credits of the movie as we're walking across the park, and we can hear Beastie Boys in the background. We just didn't care anymore. I was like, no, we know this other world exists now. So that's where we're going.
Totally. Love that. Eve, tell us a bit about your background, your creative offerings, and how you came to, be a creative partner and fundamental part of Yaegon and Kalya Scintilla and all the other projects.
So my background's in theater. Mm-hmm. I basically moved out of the Midwest in the US to the West Coast. And at that time, it was about 2007, 2008, and the West Coast scene was going off. Burning Man was becoming huge. A lot of the festivals that we hear about now were in their infant stage. And I was really inspired as a theater artist to be inside of a world of magic, where all of these beautiful fire performers and belly dancers and incredible music and visual artists. And yeah, I just basically got invited to start creating theater productions. And this was kind of new to them. They were very much into the solo artistry mentality. And I came in with this idea of working together. So very quickly, I created my own troupe that became its own thing. And that's when I was playing and working with something that was really real, which was archetypal embodiment. And that sent me into a whole new direction of understanding that there's a difference between entertainment and then there's a difference between life-changing art that we're deeply connected to ancestrally, and that opened my world. This is about the time that I met Yaegon, and we were talking about all these ideas and these concepts of like, how can we step into making art an actual portal or a gateway for consciousness, to take the psychedelics is one thing, but to actually have an intention and to set our compass, intentionally is very powerful. And so we were playing with those dynamics, and we sat down together and started mapping out our first album together, which was Open Ancient Eyes. And I brought in the mythology, and the mythology is, deeply steeped in every single culture. And there's this man, for those of you who don't know, it's named Joseph Campbell. And he collected all of these works, and his blueprint is basically in Star Wars. So this idea of the hero's journey, or this quest that we're all on as humans to evolve and to grow and to expand beyond our limited perception of reality. So this was perfect, of course, for our first album. And we set into motion using this as our framework, and really working with spoken word and then embodiment and performance and playing pretty much in real time in front of thousands of people, what really works, what really sings to the people, what's taking them there. And then slowly getting a reputation. People would say it was like going to church. It was like coming to one of our sets. And people could really feel the music and see the music and understand the music on a whole different level because of what we were doing basically behind the scenes. So it really opened this gateway of feeling like we were contributing to humanity and contributing to consciousness as a whole.
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, just kind of thinking about, you know, even you mentioned like psychedelics, but even things like just taking psychedelics and with the intention of whether it's personal growth or go into something changes everything. Same with art, same with music, same with everything. The intention really does transform it from entertainment to something deeply profound that we've all been doing since the dawn of time. So I have heard you speak a little bit about storytelling. You did kind of give a little rundown there, but yeah, so maybe we'll just start with the first album that you guys did, Open Ancient Eyes. What was the intention or story, or what was it all about? What was the shift from beat making, I guess, into a transformative piece of art?
Well, the stuff that came before, like Dance the Spiral and the EPs that came before, yeah, for sure, they were kind of more just jams and they were loosely based around themes. That's something I've always sort of felt it's just influenced me a lot in my art, is just having a theme and intention and idea. But it started out very simple with those early songs, like the track The Velvet Squish. The name came from feeling the mud in the bottom of the pond when I was tripping on mushrooms, and it felt like a velvet squish when I put my foot in the mud. And then I just thought about, you know, making a song that kind of just encapsulates the idea of what that would sound like, a velvety squish. So it was very simple back then. And then Eve came in and we started collabing on stories, and she brought mythology and storytelling to the table. So it went from, just making jams and free flowing to creating a structure now and writing a lot of notes and then breaking those notes into chapters and then figuring out how do we turn this story into a musical album, which, you know, we've been teaching this in our retreats now, because it's such a fruitful way to create when you take some time to write all these stories and these themes down, and then it kind of fuels the creation process. And so I've never really had writer's block since writing in this way, because it just informs the creativity in such a rich way.
Yeah, the trick is now to distill it down, right? Because you can get really lost.
Yeah, it gets really
in the
lofty
details.
Yeah.
So you want to really concentrate and get it really potent. And I think that's where the mythology really helps and anchors us. So I'm a bit of the co-director. So we'll start with a world. We'll maybe choose the key that the song is going to be in. I'll choose some of the instruments. He'll collab on what instruments might be in there. He'll go in, I'll come in mid-process and sort of direct it as if I'm directing a play or a movie. And the instruments are the characters. You know, what is the world that this archetype, this thing is going to breathe inside of? And specifically with Open Ancient Eyes, we took it in, there was two main characters. One is your voice of intuition that comes from deep within you. And that's the spoken word that you're going to hear through that album. And the other one is the one who's taking the journey. So he's the hero in the story, right? He's the one who's awakening to all of these past memories that are his aspects of himself and his higher self that he eventually meets at the very end, showing him he's more than just this one little tiny human person.
Yeah.
So we went really deep with the worlds that he would traverse inside of, and then again, use the map of the hero's journey in Joseph Campbell's work to really give it an arc. So we have that beginning, that middle, and that end, where we really want the listener to go, and we're treating the listener as that character in the story. So it's really inviting the listener as the being who's journeying, or he or she is the hero of that story. And then we've continued it, you know, now with Gaian Code, which is the second part in the trilogy. And then we're working on the third part of the trilogy. So those 3 albums will be this epoch, if you will, of the human awakening.
Wow. I mean, would you ever consider, or have you ever considered turning this into some kind of theatrical production? Obviously, the live shows, but something that is, flip the script on what's actually leading.
Yes, yes. So I envision this to be a multimedia experience where we can bring it into visual form, whether it's something on YouTube or an immersive experience where people are guided into the whole world. And we have many, many ideas. We were actually working for a little while to get our own venue to do exactly this, where we would do visual projections and immerse people in the sound and take people on the journey of it. I still have a vision of doing that. And she was built for that, with every single character being there, very easy to transcript it in whatever ways possible, either a theater, a dance experience, a meditation experience. And that's really what Sonic Samadhi is doing too. Sonic Samadhi is leaping off of that idea that there's still the story that we're telling, but just in a different genre.
Yeah, we've had some experience where we actually had a visual artist, the guy who does the front cover of the albums, Francis Aonic from Canberra. He did a bunch of scenery, and then on stage I had a second laptop synced to an iPad, and on the iPad I was triggering visuals to go up on the screen. And so then the song would come, and then the visual of the song would come, and that would create just this really nice feeling, because it's not like the usual psychedelic crazy things going on at the screen behind that don't really necessarily make sense with the music, other than it's all just like blah blah. So we really were sort of seeing how we could create an immersive experience where the lighting, the visuals, the performance on stage, and the decor of the venue all align with the music, so it becomes an immersive experience. And we got to play a little bit more with this, where we had a few gigs at Boulder Theatre and at the Eclipse in Oregon, where we had a full stage experience, and Eve had trained a group of women over a course of years. And so the costumes and then the visuals and the lighting, everything came together. So we got to do a little bit of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I saw you guys in Oregon, actually. So I think that was one of the times I saw you guys. Incredible. And yeah, just love, like you say, there's all the cool visuals at the back. They're all fun, but look, we're living in the future. Like, let's step it up in every direction. We're all appreciative of creatives like you guys. Incredible stuff. You mentioned the hero's journey, but I'm wondering. Yaegon, your music has always had such a cultural flavor to it in lots of different ways. What are some of the mythologies that have inspired or informed or just fascinated or resonated with you guys so clearly? I'm wondering, is it a combination of ancient mythologies and stories, or has ayahuasca had much to do with piquing that interest? Because I know what it's I know what it does to people. It's it does awaken something deep within us. I believe.
It's really a combination of nature first, and especially the ancient nature of Australia. And then magic mushrooms. Ayahuasca, I dabbled with a little bit, but it just didn't really call to me, and I didn't get the same downloads and revealings as I had with communing with the mushrooms. And, I took mushrooms at parties, but I'd often end up just leaving the dance floor and going into the bush. And like doofs in Australia, they're in some really beautiful locations, and you can just go for hours into nature. And I would start to, and this is really before I started to write the music, but I just noticed the patterns in nature, and I'd feel and listen to the language coming from each plant and tree, not necessarily hearing a dialect I could translate, but I could feel it with my body. And that was really the biggest influence in making psychedelic music, was these experiences on mushrooms. And of course, DMT came in, and that as well had profound revelations. But it was really the mushrooms, because it was very grounded, and I could feel something ancient when I would commune with nature in this way. And so the patterns in nature started to inform the patterns in the music. And I would just sort of naturally gravitate towards organic sounds. And then when I started researching cultures who had communed with nature since the dawn of time, that's when it really opened me up to ancient music, ancient rhythms, ancient instruments. And, you know, it's one thing to feel a connection to a culture because maybe you have that lineage in your blood. But I reckon there's a step outside of that where the soul has the ability to go into different bloodlines. So the soul can take on a resonance of many different cultures outside of just our one bloodline that goes back behind us. So I really feel on a soul level, things just spoke to me, like hearing Tibetan chanting for the first time. It just spoke to my soul, you know, hearing or going to like Laura Festival up in Queensland and being around Indigenous song and dance for a week, you know, a long weekend. That spoke to my soul, things like this. So it was just a natural unfurling. It wasn't really anything that I felt, you know, was forced. Even Middle Eastern music, I heard some belly dance music CDs, and it was amazing. It was so mystical, and it just spoke to my soul. I felt like I knew it. And I just started noodling on a keyboard and figuring out what the scales were, and it just came effortlessly. I didn't practice music. I didn't learn music. I just listened to it and started to play what I resonated with.
So this is a bit of a technique. We go really deep into this. How do we take something that's so cerebral, or seems like we're just imagining something in our head like a story, and how do we actually bring it down into the 3D? And this is something that I really work with a lot of artists on. And I work with Yaegon with this too, is what he's talking about is following your passion. So you find something that you really makes you come alive and very excited. And that's basically your first clue. So you kind of play like you're a detective, and you open into that world and start playing inside of that instrument, or researching, reading about that culture. And what starts to happen is you start to use your imagination kind of like a kid, but also that excitement, joy, to start breathing it to life. And then there's like this whole series that when you create intention with it, what starts to happen is you'll start to dream about it. You'll start to get these seemingly out of nowhere synchronicities and ideas. And that's the potency and the power of ritual, and the potency and power of our ancestors knowing this technology, that basically we are connected to nature and nature's connected to us. And all we have to do is use our words and our intention to call that into being. And then we start to go deeper into the truth of that and experiencing it kind of like you would be on any kind of psychedelic journey. There's all this revealing that starts to happen, right? But we do it in a sober way and through the art as a medium. And that becomes kind of the shamanic journey that we're on, collecting these clues like detectives and then putting it together, and we're weaving it then inside of the art. And when we present it, people on the other side will actually pick it up and will start to experience the same things. So that's how we're connected, and we're universally speaking a language of the human heart, of the human code, if you will, that goes beyond all languages, all ideas, all theories. So that's what we've been playing with on the underbelly of the art.
Yeah, magical. So, I mean, it's a fascinating thing. I mean, I relate very much to your, story connecting with mushrooms, Yaegon. And it is an interesting thing that these substances do have the power to, completely transform people. I know lots of people that have, played with psychedelics or plant medicines, and it's been a fun time and they've gone along their merry way. But I also know an incredible amount of people that have completely transformed the way they dress, the style of music they listen to, their thirst for knowledge and learning all of a sudden completely spark a spiritual interest or spiritual awakening that just really wasn't there or was just completely dormant. I mean, what do you think these things are in our relationship with them? What do you think they're actually doing to us that's turning us like this or making us remember?
Well, yeah, I reckon, the way that they open up the body, it's almost, when you're on these medicines, you feel way deeper, you feel things way more intensely. If you learn how to go inside on them, you can see things and discover things that you might not normally be able to discover living, in your everyday life. So I feel that, it's definitely, there's obviously always going to be caution tape because these things are that powerful. I know people have had downloads on ayahuasca and they've made really intensely negative life decisions based on that download they got because they thought that was the truth, the way, and the light. I know that in the heaviest time of using these substances, I definitely was swayed by some shiny charlatans because, I just felt so, I was pretty much out of my body at that point. And when you're not grounded and rooted in the self, it's very easy for other things to come in and manipulate. And I think also it goes back to childhood because we all have that part of us that wants to belong, and believe. Exactly. The original wound that we all carry is that separation from God or source. So I feel that plays a big part because, I look at my life and how I went from being a punk rocker, rollerblader, to a metalhead, to a disco junkie, to a doof enthusiast, to like full-fledged hippie, and then to like professional musician. It's so funny because with each of those transformations comes like a different way of dressing, different crowd of people you hang around with, and different music and all that. So I think it's always fun to look and be aware of that innocent and playful child that just wants to belong, because then you can start to maybe take the transformations not so seriously and not be completely taken by them, because you have an awareness that there's that little part of you that is like, oh, I just want to be a part of that. I just want to dress like that and be with those cool kids. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Totally. Has spirituality always been a part of either of your lives? Has it kind of always been there, or always an interest, or is this a musical awakening?
Going to the West Coast was my spiritual awakening for me. I was basically in a really conservative town in the Midwest. And when I went to the West Coast, all the worlds opened, the Burning Man world opened, but it was a lot of the therapies too, like the somatic world, and really integrating psychedelics and therapy together. And because I had a huge, really intense childhood and a lot of trauma in my background, I was really motivated to learn as much as I could. And I was in the perfect spot. I called kind of California the Mecca of healing, and so I was learning a lot about all these different therapies that just weren't available at the time to that part of the world. And that's what made me most motivated to walk inside of this world, with the music, because I felt the music was healing and I felt the art was healing. And I felt that this was a way to catalyze actual human evolution. And I got very obsessed with this idea of like, how can we evolve faster? And for a time, my stage name was Evolution for a reason, because I was so, passionate about it. And I was like, this is what we're here to do. And and then the past few years, I feel like we both started realizing it's all about being in the body. And so we slowed way down on ingesting anything and really started detoxing and clearing ourselves, meditating more, getting in a physical routine and ritual. And I feel like we're maturing now. It's like, how can we integrate this in our everyday world? And we still have these incredible moments in our everyday life of communing with, nature, but through the whole sober lens, and to really see how powerful and empowering it is when you yourself can have these incredible experiences without the need for ingesting something. Yeah. So that's been kind of the place that we've both been exploring.
Yeah. When I was a kid, I felt like I was very sensitive, and I cried a lot. I grew up in rural Australia. There was trauma in my childhood, like all of us, like any of us. There was alcoholism in the family. Yeah, but it's interesting if I look back, because I had an awakening moment, which happened on mushrooms, and it literally shifted my entire perspective on the world. But there were definitely some glimpses of childhood that I can look back at and say, it felt like there was something already there just waiting to be switched on, some little like artwork I did when I was in primary school. Certain things I was interested in the cosmos when I was a teenager. And it feels like it's already latent within you, and then you're just waiting for that experience, which happened to be mushrooms. And it was the revelation that I needed to sort of leave the city. It was this mushroom experience that, I came back to my job working in a warehouse in Ultimo in a homewares company. And my whole reality seemed fake when I came back to the city after that weekend away at Cairns Winter Solstice Festival. And it was really cool because that was that awakening moment that people talk about. But it's really just the moment that, the light just switches on or the dimmer's turned right up. And then it's like the real work is to then continue to cultivate, because the heaviness of life and the intense lessons of being here in this realm come on. And, after a while, it weighs heavy on you and your heart feels closed and you don't trust anymore. So you've got to continually work to keep that light on.
Yes.
And I really feel like after the journey of especially the last 5 years or even the last 10 years, it's really just about how open your heart is your judge of how spiritual a person is. Because I've met spiritual gurus and ayahuasqueros who are so incredibly closed-hearted, and it's a human thing. When you feel another human, they could be a little guy in a shop in Bali or someone you meet on the street and just get into a deep conversation with. There's a heart connection. And so for me, it's always been the judge of what makes someone spiritual is how heart-centered are they as a human,
Genuinely.
Yeah.
Genuinely.
Hey.
Without words.
Yeah, you can't fake it.
Yeah.
You can't fake it. It's a feeling.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, some of the most spiritual people that I would gauge as the most highly spiritual people don't always dress like that. They don't need to be covered in all the beads or the dreadlocks or whatever. And of course, not dress how you want to dress, but it's not the priority. It's the heart connection, it's the openness and the wisdom as well that they've acquired over searching for it, really. I also totally resonate with what you were saying, Eve, about, I think the goal is to get to those high states in a sober way, really. I've definitely been playing around with sobriety for a bit, currently been not in a state of sobriety, but I'm very much kind of wanting to welcome that back as a lifestyle, because, I think we are mind, body, spirit is really the kind of the holy trinity. And I think often in the party scene that body and even mind can often be very neglected, and we can even get a bit deluded in that spiritual world and just then get a spiritual ego, which I think is the most unattractive of all the ego incarnations sometimes.
Agreed. I actually jaded the scene for a really long time because of that.
Right.
And didn't even want to be associated with a person inside the scene. That's how adverse I was. And now I'm understanding acceptance, of we are, everybody's at a different level of the game, and we just honor it. And if it doesn't resonate, you just keep walking.
Totally. Totally. I love that. There's also a really big emphasis of the ancient in both of your work, and this connection with our ancient history or ancient souls or soul journey. What is the interest or fascination with the kind of, I guess, the theme of the ancient, and what does it mean to connect with our ancient selves?
Mm-hmm. So good.
Yeah, I reckon that we've been playing this game with ourselves for a few thousand years, where we decided to create a story where we erased all of our memories and our history and found ourselves in a matrix of disconnection in this weird world which doesn't honor and have reverence to the earth. And I think it's been kind of this game to come into this matrix and to wake up and to see the code of the matrix and to remember that there's so much more to this game than what we've been taught in our schools and what we can read in history or Wikipedia or any of these things. And the best part about that is it's all on the inside. And it almost seems like part of the rules of the game is that the game continually tries to distract you on the outside so that you don't advance through looking on the inside. And I know this is sort of a very mystical metaphor for life, but it's kind of the way that I definitely approach it, and it makes it fun to realize like, oh wow, this is a game and it's challenging, and we have, there is stuff coming out where people, you look on YouTube at people discovering ancient megalithic structures that aren't acknowledged by archaeologists, and the world is littered with things that completely demolish the history books. If you look at the Tartarian truthers on YouTube and just watch their first 3 episodes, you literally write off everything you've learned about Australia's formation in school books. It's crazy. And it's once it's like given to you in statistics and numbers and just basically just shown to you, like, wow, we've been they lied to us. Who are they? It's funny, but yeah, that's definitely the part where I try to keep it gamified, because if you get in this construct of they versus us, it gets, oppressor and oppressed, and you get in that dichotomy, that separation.
It's sticky in there.
Yeah. So I don't know, the ancient for us feels like this going in to discover this information and this technology that's all written in hieroglyphs on the inside, and is something that, we hear stories about how ancient humans were far more advanced than us because they had telepathy and they had abilities by location and these things that very few humans can do now. And I feel like this is all dormant stuff on the inside. You hear about mystics that activate cities, these advanced codes within the DNA. It's all written in the gene keys as well. And yeah, this is a potential within us. So I feel like our quest for the ancient is a quest also for the future, to be able to switch on in this, magical way.
And simply the way that I define it for me is that we are in the awakening, that, like he's saying, a lot of the religions hold that we are asleep or in a dream, and that we're awakening from the dream. And the ancient self is actually the true self, the one who's been through many, 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 many lifetimes, who remembers all the experiences of our journeys and infinite intelligence and reconnection to the earth, to the stars, and to where we actually come from and what we're actually doing inside of these human bodies down here playing this game. And we hold that we are connected to the creator, that we are connected to this creation intelligence that is so beyond our current understanding of beauty and majesty and beyond, that I think opening our ancient eyes is happening as we speak right now, and we will continue to awaken. And when the full awakening happens, we see everything completely different, and we understand that we are one with nature, we are one with the stars, and we can actually communicate with all of this higher intelligence that is basically a reflection of who we really are.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. There's just so many incredible clues from the past that just shatter our kind of conventional understanding of what we are, where we came from. I mean, I went to Europe the last year, and I've been before, but this time we happened to go to the Vatican, and they had an ancient Egypt collection. And I was just looking at one of the sarcophagus, I think that's what you call it, basically like the coffin for a mummy. And on the inside, the amount of detailed art and stories of just, it was so intricate just on the inside that would never be seen. I mean, these guys took the afterlife very seriously, very, very, very seriously. Incredible. I mean, slightly back to psychedelics. It's such a common thing when we go into a deep state of altered state of consciousness that we see these kind of codes, or these almost like a kind of Aztec Mayan language or symbols or hieroglyphs that often appear in lots of people. Like, what is that? I mean, yeah, the whole ancient civilization thing has been such a topic of interest for me, so much so that I actually got very, very carried away and ended up in rural Bosnia volunteering for 2 weeks and excavating a supposed pyramid.
You're at the Bosnian pyramid. Cool.
Yeah, I spent 2 weeks at the Bosnian pyramid, digging holes and climbing up that thing. Yeah, very strange. It was kind of camp conspiracy, really. All the trippers from all the different parts of the globe, all there to find the truth.
Yeah, wow.
quite an experience. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, if I've just started watching finally, like Graham Hancock's Ancient Apocalypse on Netflix. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but
no, not yet. But it's on the menu.
Yeah, just huge blocks of rock that are seemingly just completely impossible to move by today's standards, and yeah, you know, like, it can be explained away with the Pyramid of Giza or whatever, but they come bigger than that. They come way, way bigger than that, and they're just really not spoken about.
Yeah, there's that one in Lebanon at the Baalbek. That's like 200-ton slab.
Insane.
And then an entire temple built with slabs 150 tons stacked on top of each other. Yeah.
What do you think the pyramids were?
I really resonate with them being an initiation chamber, initially, a way that you could experience a DMT portal. The King's Chamber, the sarcophagus, was not a sarcophagus, but just a place to lay down. And originally, it was said that it lined up so that when a human laid down in it, their pineal gland was directly in line with the center of the pyramid. And that energy from that perfect resonant field would give the soul's ability to travel outside the body. And they were gone for 3 days, and they trained in initiate schools outside the pyramid to learn how to come back to the body. And not all souls would. Some would continue on. Like, sometimes you've heard a story of someone smoking 5-MeO DMT in water, and they just leave and they don't come back. And in our world, they're dead, but their soul just decided to continue on. And, you know, when an autopsy is done, cause of death is unknown because the soul just leaves. So, yeah, I really feel that the pyramid was an initiation chamber. And then I think there was an invasion that happened in ancient Egypt relating to potentially to some star beings, and there was a taking over, and then the patriarchal system with the pharaohs was imposed, and the whole story changed.
That's a rabbit hole we could go down for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Love it.
How deep do you want to go?
Yeah. I had these tattoos done which have the symbol of Hathor from ancient Egypt, because I discovered the work of Tom Kenyon, and he was a channeler for the Hathors, and was the only real, like, sound healer I've ever followed. and went to one of his 3-day workshops in Washington. And it was amazing. And after I got these tattoos done in Sydney, I was at, I think it was Strawberry Fields Festival down in Victoria. And I'd woken up one morning quite early, and I just had like a superfood smoothie and said to a couple of friends, like, let's go to that like 2,000-year-old tree we found yesterday out in the scrub and go and meditate under this tree. And during that meditation, I had a full-fledged vision of being in ancient Egypt with a group of people sitting outside a temple with these luminous beings around us that were teaching us from another dimension. They were like speaking through us. And it was I wasn't on any substances except spirulina. And it really gave me this of like, whoa, that was a past life. Like, I remember that. Wow, that's cool. So I like it when you get those little glimpses.
I mean, talk about synchronicities. My next question was about past lives and if you've ever experienced one. So having that vision, what makes it different to a dream then and resonates so much that you're like, no, that was something a bit different. That was something more.
The first part of that particular experience was the fact that it was the tree that spoke to me and said, I will take you wherever you want to go. Like, where do you want to go? And I said, I want to go up and out above the earth. And as I'm sitting there, eyes closed in the bush with my back to this tree, I literally just zoom up above the earth. And it's not like this something you're trying to imagine. You're literally you're viewing a full screen, a movie screen, like, whoa, this is happening. And so I think one other really amazing past life regression technique that I discovered through a friend who was practicing it was called crystal dreaming. And you would lay down in a particular matrix of crystals. There was about, 30 or 40 different types of crystals aligned in a very particular way. The guy who taught this technique said that he had a life in ancient Atlantis and that he was bringing this technique from ancient Atlantis into this time. And when I did that, the first time I did it, I had 3 really powerful past life regressions, and 2 of them directly related to things that were happening karmically with relationships in this lifetime. And it was undoubtedly like, oh, okay, this is real. After I had that experience, I walked away it wasn't even a question of like, try and prove it to me. It was like, okay, for me, this is 100% real. And these experiences, are not something that were just made up in my mind. Like, this is a full, an interface with another timeline, with souls in that timeline that are souls that I've met in this timeline. And the way that the relationships have gone in this time is that there's been a resolution of the karma of what I did to them in this lifetime and what they did to me in this lifetime. And I can see it clearly.
One little thing that I can kind of point to is how I can tell something feels more real than just a dream is that the dream will kind of feel kind of wispy in its reality. But when it's a little bit more than a dream, you can see details, like very distinct details, and it's very vivid. So there's this vivid and very detailed, like I just had a dream the other night and I was telling Yaegon about it when I woke up, and it was like a full story with all of these details. And I was telling him every single part of the dream, and the details were so specific. He was just like, whoa, this was not a dream. And I'm like, I don't think it was a dream, but that's a clue. That's when it's like, okay, this is a little bit more visceral than just something that I'm just making up, in my head.
I had one 2 nights ago that was so bizarrely vivid, in line with all the subjects that we've been talking about now, that I just felt completely compelled to write it all down, which I do not. Just like, I got to get this down. This is bizarre. I won't bore you with the details, but yeah.
I think something, there was like a handful of my good friends who said like 3 nights ago, they also had incredible, very detailed dreams. I think something happened.
Yeah, maybe. It was very much in line with a cosmic ancient past, or maybe a alternative timeline. I don't know, but again, I won't. Eve, have you ever had any connection with the kind of the idea of past lives, or your soul's journey before this incarnation?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm a bit more of an intuitive in the sense of like I'm sure there's a word for it, and I'm skipping on the word, but it's basically when you just instantly know something. So I'll see and feel instantly, and know kind of in my gut of something that happened or a flash. And this happened when Yaegon and I actually met. When we met, there was memories that kind of came to me, and I could see and feel and know exactly what they were. And I would tell him sometimes pieces of past lives that we were either both inside of, or I could actually see his past lives. And I said, look, it's like this, like this, like this. And he's like, whoa, like I've had those kinds of dreams, or yeah, like there's a part of me that actually remembers what you're talking about. So it's an interesting thing that when you open that door, you can actually feel, experience, know. And my whole thing is meeting souls, and I'll look them in the eyes. And I love seeing if we know each other already. That was my favorite thing to do at festivals, was really to come up to people. And when I knew that I knew them, I'd get really excited, and I would have these visions or these flashes of little blips of time. But I actually want to go deeper into hypnosis. I'm actually digging into that right now, because there's some information I kind of want to dig up so I can have a healing in this life. And I've been watching some different people use hypnosis to heal certain traumas that are showing up in this life that are actually from a long time ago.
Yeah, actually, there's that guy who wrote the book Journey of Souls, and he did hypnosis and mapped out life between lives. And he did over 10,000 hours with, I think, over 100 clients, where he figured out how to use prompts to take the hypnosis therapy into what happens when the soul left the body in their last life, or another life, and talking about soul groups and teachings. And it's so fascinating.
So cool.
But yeah, one thing I wanted to mention, which I think is a fun little experiment, and I do caution it with, it can be a little bit shocking, but you can actually do a soul gazing with yourself or with someone else, where it's best in a dark room with a single candle. And if you're by yourself, you're in front of a mirror, and maybe you're about half a meter to a meter from the mirror. Or if you're sitting with a person, you sit opposite each other, about a meter away, and you have the candle off to the side, just so it's illuminating the face enough. And then you just look into the person's soul, or into your own soul through your eyes. And you don't focus so much on them in this world, but you look through them. And if you're sober, it'll take about 20 to 30 minutes usually, and you'll start to see the face shift, and it'll start to become different beings, different potentially past lives, or after doing ayahuasca one time. And this is what happens when you're on medicine. It happens a lot faster. Like within a minute, you'll start to see shifting happening if you're doing it right. And I had an Egyptian guy, after we'd done an ayahuasca ceremony together, he said, can I gaze into your soul and see your past lives? And I said, sweet, let's do it. And because he said, I feel like I remember you from somewhere. And so I'm looking into his face, and because we're still a little bit on the tail end of the journey, the medicine's still in the body, his face started to morph into these different men and women. And it was like a flicker book going through these different lifetimes. And I was thinking, like, wow, he's had a lot of lifetimes, because I was seeing so many different people, and they were all from, or mostly from, this Middle Eastern and African lineage. And then he started becoming animals, and he was a wolf and he was an ape. And I was like, whoa, this guy's been animals as well. And he said, he could see my face, and he's like, what are you seeing? And I said, man, you've been on this planet a long time, and not just as a human. He's like, yeah, I know. And he said, all right, but what? And I said, well, what do you see with me? He's like, well, most of the faces I'm seeing are not actually from this world. I'm seeing a lot of different creatures that I'd never seen before. And I said, well, yeah, I do get around. And he said, but I feel like we got this connection. And I said, you know what? I know where we've met. I already know. And I had a past life regression where I'd felt myself as this Egyptian woman, and I could feel what she felt like. So in that moment, I felt her, and he said to me, I didn't say anything. I just became her. And he said, whoa, you look like an Egyptian priestess. And he said princess. He said princess. And I said, no, she was a priestess. He's like, oh, that makes sense. So we had a connection in ancient Egypt. And I said, yeah, I guess so. So yeah, that was a fun little story.
That's amazing. Then things got a little weird. No, just kidding. Just kidding. We've kind of come up to an hour, but do you guys have time for like one or two more questions, or totally fine if not? Yeah, cool. You did mention star people, and I just want to know, do you think that there's been any kind of alien intervention part of our timeline that we have been forgotten about?
That's a big story.
Yeah, it's a big one. Would say that my personal experience has been very much like Indiana Jones, where I act as a musician, he acts as an archaeologist, but we're really out for the adventure. And one thing I got obsessed with for more than a decade was the story of the Anunnaki. And I looked at the Anunnaki from the perspective of Zechariah Stitchen's translation of the clay tablets of Sumeria. I looked at it through the perspective of many different channelers, Pleiadian channelers, and a woman who wrote a book based on past life regressions and channeling, all about the Anunnaki. And I feel like it's going out into the world and seeing evidence of this story for myself and meeting other people who've been on the path of researching and listening to this story for decades as well. It's been very much like an Indiana Jones thing where I've experienced direct experience with ancient sites, with people that give a really rich story about many different races' involvement in Earth, not just the Anunnaki. They're just one story. Yeah. There's serpent beings, there's lizard beings, there's bird beings, there's cat beings. Mm-hmm. And, I really feel, when you have you ever played that computer game Skyrim? And you can be a lizard person.
I haven't, but I've seen YouTube videos of it.
I kind of feel like we express these versions of our celestial heritage and information, our celestial code or memory through our creativity, and these cat beings and these lizard beings, they show up in different forms through fantasy stuff that we've created. But yeah, I would say very much so. There's been a lot of intervention in Earth from star races. And I really feel like we're going to start to awaken to that more.
As a collective.
As a collective, yeah. And I feel like there's going to be a particular tricksy little group that try and manipulate it to make it a negative thing, because it makes sense that if you keep the humans disconnected from their connection to the celestial realms, you will not be able to unify them in one heart. When we connect with our star lineages, there'll be very little time for division amongst the Earth anymore, because we're united with this connection to the star races that are all there waiting. And I feel like it's a maturing process. We're going through a maturation.
Initiation.
Yeah.
And that's what all the prophecies talk about. The humans are going through initiation of awakening. And so we dissolve this story of, like what he talked about, being oppressed or being the oppressor, the duality of the nature of reality of us versus them is going to dissolve, basically. So we awaken the reality that we are actually multidimensional beings, that we actually were different races at different times. And during your evolution, yes, you were a bad guy, and yes, you were a good guy, and yes, you were both, and you were none. So when we open to that, it takes all of that fear away. And that's what we're transcending. We're transcending our own fear. But in order to do that, we have to face all of our fears. So we're going through these initiations as a collective of facing our fear of death, facing our fear, death through illness, through not having enough resource, all the things that are presenting themselves on the world stage are fears. And we just have to walk through them and continue to bring consciousness to them. And then eventually we hit that peak moment of evolution where we return to our remembering or our ancient selves, our ancient knowing.
Yeah. Fantastic.
We have that. We have that thing called the subconscious, which, you know, can be sending negative messages that manifest in our reality as, you know, destructive patterns and things. And it's in the subconscious, it's in the shadow, we can't see it, yet this script is playing out. I kind of feel that the shadow on the world stage of, you know, the obsoletes and the dark controllers that conspiracy people love to get obsessed with is just a mirror of our own subconscious and that part of us that is programmed through trauma and running its own script in the world. So yeah, I think that's very much what's happening right now. You know, the apocalypse it means revealing, great revealing. So that's where we are.
Wow. Love it. Not mad at it. And just a light throwaway question, maybe for you, Eve. Do you believe in God, and what is the divine? Just a light.
The divine.
Where does the divine sit with all of this, and what is it?
I love distilling it because I think that there's profundity inside of the simplicity. Yeah. And so the mind likes to make things very complex. So for me, what the divine is your innate aliveness, your heart, and your ability to let go and surrender to something greater than yourself. And yet simultaneously in that letting go, you're actually reconnecting with the truth of what you really are, which is life. You are life itself. And when you feel it pulsing and breathing and you feel the wind on your face, these are pointing to the consciousness that's emanating all of that experience for you. So it's all personal. It's all our own journey. But yeah, it's waiting for us. It's waiting for us to reconnect and find union again within the heart, body, mind, heart as one.
Yeah, I love that, where the very concept of life itself is kind of like, that's kind of God, you know, like you've got time and space, and then you have a whole other dimension that almost doesn't need to be there. But maybe it's an intrinsic part of the fabric of the cosmos, you know, the very nature that there is some kind of metaphoric eye there to witness all of it. Maybe that, you know, it's like the old saying, if a tree falls in the woods and no one's around to hear it, does it make a sound, you know? Maybe that witnesser is a very much an essence or essential ingredient of the cosmos itself. Super fun conversation. You guys are amazing. Love what you guys do. And I'm very much looking forward to seeing you guys at Tanglewood. I'll be there. I think you guys are performing 4 different sets on all 4 of your, is that correct? All 4 of your creative projects? No?
I think Griffin Cloud will be there. I think Kalya and Merkaba will be there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Yaegon solo. So I won't be there, unfortunately.
Oh, you won't be there. Damn. Well, yeah.
But don't worry, I'll be returning to Oz, I think in March, where we're cooking something up with Sonic Samadhi and Kalya.
Fantastic. Can't wait. Thank you both so much. Really, really appreciate your time. And what's the best way for people to see what you do, support you guys, get on board or connect?
Yeah. Bandcamp is a great place. It's a good community of, you know, music lovers. Of course, Spotify, if you want to, you know, give pathetic little pennies on a dime to art. It's very convenient. It's a very convenient tool.
Bandcamp.
Bandcamp's great. You know, even streaming on YouTube is always great. We're working
up.
We're working on putting more content on YouTube, and we've actually launched a Sonic Samadhi channel just called Sonic Samadhi. And we're putting up long form meditation music on that ongoing. We did the album that we just did, the Open Ancient Eyes remix, but we're doing some new stuff coming in a few weeks, I think. And yeah, that'll be ambient meditation stuff. So yeah.
Fantastic. Such a fan. Have been for well over a decade. So thank you both for everything you do, and yeah, instilling a bit more depth, meaning, and beauty into a beautiful scene that was already an incredibly beautiful scene. But yeah, thank you both.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
Awesome. Well, take care, everyone, and thanks for listening. See you later.